In this video, we're going to generate and save the email verification token in our database. So when user signs up with our application, we create user details object and then we persist that object into a database. And our user class, user entity, contains one field which is called email verification token. And we will need to generate this token and let it save together with the user entity. So let's go into our REST controller first, just to begin from the beginning. So we will go to REST controller, and when user fills in the registration form and then submits it, the HTTP post request is called, and then this function in our API gets triggered, which is called create user, and it accepts HTTP post request, and the user details will contain that user information. And then we call create user function, which is inside of user service implementation class. So let's go there, and this is our function inside of the user service implementation, then prepares the user entity object here, and then we store that user entity object into a database. Now we don't have in this function any code that generates email verification token. So let's generate it, save it, and then we will write code that will send email message with a link which will contain this email verification token attached to this link as a URL query parameter. Okay, so what we need to do here is we will need to use user entity object, and then we will need to set email verification token to the value that we are going to generate. And I will use utility class to host the email verification token generation code there. So I will use utils class, and we'll make the function that generates email verification token static as well, just like we have generate user ID. So let's call it generate email verification token. And let's give it user ID so that this user ID is being used as part of that token. And if we need that user ID, we can decrypt the token and read the user ID from that token as well. Okay, so let's save this, and I will copy the name of the function so that I don't make typo. And now let's go to utility class, and below here we will create a function that generates a token. So I have prepared a little code snippet. I'll paste it here and we'll walk you through it. So the generate email verification token will use the same JSON Web Token libraries, and we are going to use the builder to build the token. So here we set the subject to contain public user ID, and this is not as important as next line here where we set the expiration time. So when we set the expiration time, we basically use now the current time, and we add to it the needed expiration time, which I think is equal to 10 days from today. So we basically calculate what would be the 10 days, and then we add this 10 days to current time, and the expiration then set to 10 days in the future. And then we sign this token with security algorithms. Let's import signature algorithms from JSON Web Token, and we use our own security constants class. And from that security constants class, we get the token secret, which we already talked about. The token secret is stored in the property file. So our security constants here, we have a method that reads that token secret, and it will use it to encrypt our JSON Web Token. And when we check for expiry date, we then decrypt this JSON Web Token with the same token secret that we used to encrypt it. Okay, and once we have the token generated, we will simply return it. And if we go back to user service implementation, we then save it to the user entity class, and user entity class is then persisted to our database. So this is it. Let's run our application and see how this code works. And maybe before we do, let's just also set user entity set email verification status to false, just to have these two values, email verification token and email verification status, set to the values we need.